It's 7 p.m. on Monday, October 9th, 2023, and I will call this City Council study session to order. I do want to thank everyone who's joining us this evening. This is a study session, so there's no public comment, and we now are live streaming on the internet. And so if you join us for the flag salute, and if Councilmember White would lead us.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then for the record, all council is present. And for staff, we have everyone here, which includes our planning manager Stolnecker, Director Madden, Finance Director Robeck, Chief Hernandez, Tricia Summers, our city clerk, and then we also have our soon-to-be finance director, Susie Simpson, joining us. Council, we do have two items this evening. The first one's on page 3 of your packet. It is the first read of Ordinance 2076-23 for a budget amendment. I'm going to turn the floor over to our finance director, Michelle Robeck, and then we'll open up the floor for discussion.
Just gotta do one thing first. Sorry. Hello, council. The first thing that we'll be presenting tonight is the budget amendment number 2. The proposed ordinance provides adjustments to the 2023 budget as adopted by City Council via ordinance number 2060-22 on December 5th, 2022, and amended via ordinance 2070-23 on May 15th, 2023. This is the second ordinance amending the 2023 budget and reflects changes that have occurred since adoption of the original budget. These adjustments are detailed in the accompanying exhibits. Also included in this is the attached Exhibit B, which is a carry forward of unexpended 2022 budget for continuing projects. This exhibit details unexpended appropriations for continuing projects, which may be carried forward from the previous year's budget pursuant to RCW 35A-33-150. These changes are not required to approve by ordinance and are therefore not reflected in the current, and are reflected in the current year's amended budget. In other words, the budget numbers that you are seeing in the preliminary budget document. They have been incorporated. The ordinance tonight is just on the new budget amendments in Exhibit A. Does anyone, do we need to, no, this is just a study session. Does anyone have any questions about Exhibit A or any of the budget amendment requests in Exhibit A?
Councilmember Strader.
Yeah, I was just going through it, and I noticed in the budget 2023, there was an adjustment made, and then in 24, we also had, and it has to do with salary wages, and it looks like we lowered it, and then now this year we're bringing it back up to that level. I couldn't remember, or it's just curiosity, what was the reason for the decrease, and now that we're readjusting it back up to?
Which?
I'm looking at page 63.
Okay.
Expenditures and uses, salaries and wages.
Oh, you
Councilmember Strader, I think we're on the first agenda item,
Oh,
which,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Yeah.
just the amendment. No, it's
Yeah.
okay, just the amendment. I know you're excited to get to the budget.
Aren't we all?
Councilmember Whitaker.
Thank you. I was going to ask, though, to be able to follow this, I'm assuming that, so where there are pass-throughs, it's also reflected elsewhere in the other funds. So if, how do I want to say it? For instance, if we were talking about park impact fees, you reflect if they're taken out, but you also in another place have it showing where it went. Do you follow what I'm?
I think so. There are a few of these a few of what I believe you're asking about in Exhibit A. The first one there in the general fund in particular, we are requesting to increase two expenditure line items, the professional services in building and the professional services or applicant pass-through professional services in planning. But we recognize that there are related revenue increases associated with those.
Because I see the transfers out, I mean, that's obvious, but where it's coming from the fund where the funds reside, and then they're being transferred out, I guess that's what I'm asking. I guess those are represented on here too, yes?
They
But I
are.
mean, just like these are.
Yes, and there are a few of those because it's broken up into the different funds. It's not quite as easy to see, but yes, there should be.
That's-
If there isn't a corresponding revenue for each expenditure, then that's a mess up on my part, but I do specifically remember looking for that. And for instance, once again, in the general fund, there's the transfer out of 200,000, but then you'll see it back in the water capital fund.
Exactly, that's what I
Yes.
was. So
And-
I just also probably just need time just to go through this more so then I can,
Yeah, there are let me see, there are a couple. The street fund is another one where you see a transfer in of 58,000, but then you see the transfer out up above in the
Okay.
general fund.
that's what I was
Does-
saying.
does
I just
that-
need more time to look at it so that I can. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's-
does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I
or-
just wanted to
okay.
make sure that those all jived with each other.
Yeah,
You know, in the,
most definitely. If I missed one, please let me know, but I remember
well,
doing
not
a
saying that
double
you would
check. Yeah.
because I mean, the accounting software should be accounting for that, but
And
it makes it a little bit difficult not impossible, a little bit difficult to follow to make sure that just funds are being represented correctly.
Right. And down at the, I guess down at the very bottom line, the total all funds is that negative 110,600 is the amount that will be taken out of the various ending fund balances. All of the other adjustments have a corresponding revenue related to it so that there's no effect on ending fund balance.
Okay. Thank you. You did very well.
And unless there's any specific objections to any of these tonight, I think the plan is to go ahead. These are to be approved next council meeting. And so then the plan would be to incorporate these amounts into the final budget document or the next time the budget document comes to you. These changes will be incorporated into that document. They will only reflect the 2023 budget. So you won't see any changes in the 2024 budget. It's just that 2023 budget amount that will be affected.
Any questions on the amendment? Mayor Pro Tem?
Do you project you'll probably have one more amendment this year?
I hope not, but we'll definitely want to look at all the funds, come towards the end of mid to end of November to make sure that we've captured everything and there aren't any surprises that might have popped up that would lead us to go over in any one fund. That's really the thing that we're wanting to look at. We may be over in particular line items, but the goal is to not be over budget in any fund in total. So right now, this looks like it should do it based on the trends and how the expenditures are progressing. But some things do come up, so it's possible, but I'm hoping that this will be the last one before the end of the year.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Whitaker?
You just made me think of something else. So that, well, when I saw this, I was thinking, we haven't had many budget amendments this year. So we'll have, all told, at worst, 3 budget amendments that'll come to us.
That's correct. And budget amendment number 2, if I remember correctly, was strictly a wage scale adjustment, so it wasn't a numbers adjustment. But yes, it would be a total of 3 if we need to squeeze one more in there before the end of the year.
Okay.
Everyone good on that one? Okay, so this will come back next week? Next week, yeah, next week. So moving on to the main agenda item this evening, it does start on page 13 of your packet. It is the 2024 budget. So I will turn, actually, before I start, I just want to say that this budget is a enormous task. And it's not just me and Michelle, the directors and managers and the police chief and even our city clerk play a huge part in getting all of this put together. So it does take all of us in this room to make this happen. And so I appreciate everyone's hard work on this and making the deadline to get it to council today. So I will turn the floor over to Michelle, and then following her review, or I guess at any point, maybe there's a good stopping point to check in, feel free to ask any questions.
Most definitely.
And actually, one more thing, you will get a month to review this. And so we don't expect you to have, we don't expect you to ask all your questions this evening, or maybe even have all your questions this evening. So you do get a month before it comes back to council.
So tonight we'll be presenting the 2024 preliminary budget. This is the first presentation of the 2024 budget, but there will be, as the mayor noted, additional presentations on November 13th, November 20th, and lastly on November 4th for final approval. I have some prepared information that I was going to present, but please feel free to stop me at any time for questions, clarification, or additional information. So let's dive right in. Throughout this presentation, I'll be referring to the budget document pages instead of the meeting packet pages, because they do flow with the table of contents. Those numbers are in the center of your packet pages, but please let me know if there's any confusion there. I did want to point that out, that a few great places to start to get an overall view of the 2024 budget are first the mayor's budget message on pages 1 through 5 and the citywide budget summary on page 12. Both of these show a summary of all of the funds, and the mayor's budget message highlights many of the changes included in the 2024 budget. A few of the bigger changes for this budget relate to staffing. The 2024 budget adds 3 new positions, including a deputy city clerk, a finance administrative assistant, and a public works project manager, and removes 1 maintenance 1 position. The deputy city clerk and finance administrative assistant positions have been added to address increased workloads, and the public works project manager position has been added to assist the public works department with various projects throughout the city. This is expected to be a 3-year limited term exempt position, the project manager position that is. The maintenance 1 position that has been eliminated is currently vacant and was originally budgeted in 2023 to address facilities and parks maintenance needs outside of regular business hours. It has been decided that these needs may be better addressed by offering overtime to existing employees instead. An analysis of salary ranges for all exempt employees was also completed in 2023. Salary ranges for several exempt employees were adjusted to reflect current market conditions, and all other exempt positions were increased by the Consumer Price Index of 4.6%. The city's labor agreement with non-uniformed and non-exempt employees also provides for wage increases equal to the CPIU of 4.6% in 2024. In addition, wage and benefit allocations have been recalculated for the remaining maintenance 1 positions based on actual historical hours worked by fund and department. These changes, along with the exempt position changes, affected wages and benefits in all operating funds. And I did want to point out that in last year's budget, the 2023 budget, we recalculated the allocations for all public works positions with the exception of this maintenance one position. We blended those rates. This year, I took a 3-year look back at all of the people in those positions and their hours and how they allocated and reallocated those based on those historical hours. So you may see some movement between funds based on that reallocation. As in previous years, wages for all employees have been budgeted at the top step of each pay range, and benefits have been budgeted at the highest applicable rates for all employees. This is just a summary of the bigger changes, so let's move on to some of the larger funds. Does anyone have any questions at this time before we move on to a few of the bigger funds?
Councilmember Cedar?
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to ask about some of those staffing changes. In 2023, was the maintenance one position that's being eliminated, were those duties covered by overtime, or how are we covering those duties this year?
You want me to take that?
Beg your pardon?
I can take that if you
Yeah,
want.
that'd be great.
So originally, we had added that maintenance one to do park and facility maintenance over the weekend. And it was taking some negotiation with the union because we wanted it to be a Thursday through Sunday shift, which is not outlined in our union contract. So while we were doing these negotiations, which we weren't getting where we wanted to be, the parks weren't getting done on the weekend. And so we came up with the idea of offering a 3-hour overtime shift to our maintenance ones. So we ultimately saved money, and then we accomplished getting the parks cleaned on the weekend.
And the current employees people were taking you up on that offer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
To my
that's
knowledge, we didn't have any weekend where we had to force someone to work, correct? Yeah.
That's exactly what I
So
wanted to get
it's a
at.
win-win. And so then I just stopped negotiating with the union on it, and we moved forward with the OT.
Great. And then the other positions that we're adding, it sounds like they're all kind of taking, the major players in our city and adding a deputy more or less to them. Because I assume that the planning or the project manager is going to fall under Public Works, which I think is a great idea to have this. I'm just kind of curious what the scope of and I'm mostly interested in the project manager position, what the scope of the duties of that person would be. Can someone speak to that?
Do you want to take that? Oh, I'm sorry.
So this project manager position would facilitate projects from conception to completion. And they would work with consultants if a consultant is required. But the primary goal of this individual would be to expedite some of the projects that we have not been able to accomplish over the last few years. Large irrigation projects at the park, park improvements. There's a few other wayfinding projects, just some that have stalled out and that without a city engineer on staff, personally, I just haven't had the time to push those projects forward.
Yeah, okay. I think that makes sense to me. My concern is that, it's a fair, relative to your position's salary, it's lower. And so it seems like it's more of someone that you're going to be able to task to kind of be the mirror image of you. We're not going to get you everywhere, which would be ideal. But do you think it's going to accomplish that? I mean, is that what you need?
Yes, it is what I need. I need a me light version to help push some of these projects forward. And we'll be working very closely together. If they have any questions, I'll be there to help them expedite a solution.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a great way to move some of these projects because some of these things, I feel like I've seen every year, and it's like, let's get them going.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thanks.
And
And
in fact, I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Just one tiny little accounting type note. The allocation for that position actually is exactly the same as Director Madden's. I do anticipate that in actuality, some of those wages will be charged to particular projects, but at this point, we don't know. So we can look at that after the first year and see if that allocation needs to be changed.
And I just want to echo Director Madden just a little bit in that even if we, which hopefully we will, get a city engineer, we still need at least an extra body for 3 years because I feel like we are really behind on projects. You know, some of these have been on the books since I've been here, and we have the money, we just don't have the people. And so that's why we talked about 3 years, is we feel that, you know, a 3-year time frame would give us what we need. And then if we need more, then we would obviously come back and ask council for more. But we're confident that the 3 years would be adequate. Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm trying to catch up a little bit because I start from page 1 and read through and work my way through the document. On page 17, internal service funds for 501 and 503. When you look at the first one that's mentioned, 79, just help me identify where that is on page 79 for the electric capital as referenced by internal service funds on page 79.
Okay, so on page 79, did you have a question about the stormwater asset replacement fund or the internal service funds that come after?
I'm referring to the table of contents. When you look at internal service funds, it references you 501 vehicle replacement maintenance fund, and it says 79. I suspect that's page 79. I could be incorrect. If you look at page 79, that's electric capital. So I'm just curious about the structure. I like to go page 1 through the whole document and work my way through, as opposed to hop skipping through it. Is that correct? That was the first thing I looked at. I went to internal service funds, 501 vehicle repair and maintenance fund, and it's identified on page 79.
Okay.
Is it on page 79?
It is, but it's page 79 of the document and of the budget document, and those numbers are right in the center of the page. The packet page numbers are to the right. So I was referring to the budget document pages which tie back to that table of contents.
I'm sorry, I'm having a little difficulty with it. Show me what you believe. 79.
So it's actually page 79 of the budget document is page 96 of your meeting, of your packet.
So 79 is really 96. Because I'm looking at page 79, which is where I thought it would be by the reference, and that's electric capital.
Councilmember Whalen, those numbers are the packet numbers, which would not be in the budget. So it's your, Francis, can you show him the number that it references?
Where do you see page 96?
That's
79, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Now I've got them correct in my mind. I just wanted to point that out also, is that this is page 62 of a packet. This is page 79 of the budget.
Yeah.
Okay. And it was just, I made a little note on it. I have to be taught every year because I will ask questions that confuse me, and thank you.
No worries.
Thank you.
And the city clerk and I kind of went back and forth on whether to eliminate the budget document numbers or the agenda, have them override by the agenda numbers. And it's just tricky because we do have a table of contents in the document that refers to specific pages. So we tried to make a compromise, but yeah, it does get a little confusing, and I apologize for that.
No, it actually should be the budget page number,
Okay,
in my belief.
okay.
If anybody who's looking at it, it's difficult to see 79 is actually 96 of the packet.
Got it.
Okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, let's see. So this is just a summary of what we've talked about. It's just a summary of some of the bigger changes. So we're going to move on to some of the larger funds. I won't be specific in my prepared presentation. I won't be specifically going fund by fund or focusing on any of the smaller special revenue type funds. But please let me know if you have any questions about any of those funds. So I'm just going to dig right into the general fund. That can be found on, a summary of the general fund can be found on page 21 of the budget document. So that's the center number there. I just want to try and reference both here. So that would be page 38 of your, or I need new glasses. Sorry. Thank you. On that summary page, you'll notice that general fund expenditures increased a total of about $572,000. Of this amount, $473,000 is a result of increased transfers out to other funds. Transfers out to the Criminal Justice Fund and Street Fund to subsidize operations make up the largest increases. There are also increased expenditures in the mayor and executive and finance departments, largely due to the addition of a deputy city clerk and a finance administrative assistant. There is also a modest increase in the Culture and Recreation Department for planned expansion of community programs and activities. General fund revenues increased a total of about $341,000, with sales taxes representing the largest increase of about $283,000. These taxes have exceeded expectations in current and previous years, and the 2024 budget amount is based on these increasing trends. Property taxes have been increased by the legal limit of 1%, and sales and other taxes have been increased by 1% over projected amounts for 2023. Utility taxes and investment earnings have been increased according to the current trends. And you will notice in nearly all of the funds that investment earnings are slightly increased in the 2024 budget based on increased earnings percentages that we're seeing this year across the board. Thank goodness. So over the past several years, the general fund ending fund balance has grown due to better than anticipated sales tax and development revenues, as well as restrained expenditures. The 2024 budget incorporates the use of these funds to address emerging issues such as public safety and increased administrative workloads. It is anticipated that use of these funds will continue in future years, but increased revenues related to new development activity and possible annexations will reduce this need. However, I do want to point out that 2022 saw a fairly substantial increase in that general fund ending balance that we weren't expecting at the time of the 2023 budget. This was primarily due to mostly one-time revenue increases due to various development through the city, and sales taxes that ended up coming in even higher than we'd projected for the year. And then, of course, some restrained expenditures. So that's some great news. We currently, at the end of 2022, the general fund had a little over $4 million in its fund balance. Unless there are any questions, I was going to move on to the Criminal Justice Fund. Any questions on the general fund? Okay. A summary of the general fund can be found on page 41 of the budget document. Criminal Justice Fund expenditures increased a total of about $393,000. $272,000 of this increase is associated with wages and benefits as a result of a new labor agreement that was negotiated with the Milton Police Guild in 2023. The new agreement provides for wage increases of 9% for uniformed personnel in 2024. Increases to insurance of about $33,000 and dispatch services of about $25,000 also contributed to total increased expenditures in this fund. Revenues in this fund increased a total of about $310,000, nearly all of which is due to increased transfers in from the general fund. Moving on to the street fund on page 46 of the budget document. Street fund expenditures increased a total of about $108,000. A majority of this increase is due to increased wages and benefits of about $96,000. Revenues in this fund increased a total of about $150,000, nearly all of which is due to increased transfers in from the general fund. Next up is the electric utility fund, and the summary of that fund can be found on page 57 of the budget document. And this is I'm referring to just the summary pages. For all of these summary pages that I'm referring to, there are, right behind them in the document, there are detailed pages that make up these summaries. I've just found that sometimes you can gather a lot by looking at those summary pages and really get a better idea of what is causing the various increases. It's kind of easier to see at a glance. So the electric utility fund summary page on page 57, electric utility fund expenditures increased a total of about $277,000. A majority of this increase is due to increased wages and benefits of about $171,000. This fund also included some increases related to insurance, taxes, allocations, and transfers out as well. That was one other thing that I wanted to point out. We saw a very large increase in our insurance this year, about $100,000. That is spread out among multiple funds, but some, depending on the allocation, like the Criminal Justice Fund, experience a fairly high increase in insurance. Revenues in the electric utility fund increased a total of about $160,000, nearly all of which is due to increased electric sales revenue, which has been increased by 7.7% of 2022 actual amounts. This increase was originally established through the 2019 electric utility rate study. Moving on to the water utility fund on page 64. Water utility fund expenditures increased a total of about $390,000. A majority of this increase is due to increased wages and benefits of about $241,000. This fund also included some increases related again to insurance, taxes, allocation, and transfers out. And for the enterprise funds, any increases to revenue have a correlated increase to utility taxes, excise taxes, and those transfers out, because all of those expenditures are directly tied to those revenues. So anytime you do see an increase in revenues, there will most likely be an increase in those various taxes, allocations, and transfers out as well. Revenues in the water fund increased a total of about $331,000, nearly all of which is due to increased water sales revenue, which has been increased by 12% of 2022 actual amounts. These increases were established through the water utility rate study completed in 2023. Next up is the stormwater utility fund page summary on page 73. Stormwater utility fund expenditures, I'll wait for pages to turn, sorry. Stormwater utility fund expenditures increased a total of about $35,000. Much of this increase is due to increased wages and benefits of about $15,000. This fund also included some increases related to insurance and allocations as well. Revenues in this fund have not been increased, but a stormwater utility rate study is expected to be completed by the end of 2023 for this fund. Any questions on anything so far? Okay. As indicated in the mayor's budget message back on page 1, sorry to get you flipping around, but as indicated on the mayor's budget message on page 1, you'll notice that total proposed expenditures for 2024 are 7% lower than the previous year. This is primarily due to decreased expenditures in the capital improvement fund, as well as in the electric, water, and stormwater capital and asset replacement funds. These decreases total about 3.8 million, with the largest decrease of about 2.1 million in the water capital fund. These budget decreases in these funds reflect the efforts made in 2023 and planned for 2024 to continue and complete capital projects that have already been initiated. Transfers out from the real estate excise tax funds to the capital improvement fund for capital projects are about $800,000 lower as well. Also indicated in the mayor's budget message on page 2, total proposed revenues for 2024 are 4% lower than the previous year. This is primarily due to decreased revenues totaling about 2.6 million in the capital improvement fund and water and stormwater capital funds. Decreased revenues in the capital improvement fund are a result of decreased transfers in from the real estate excise tax funds and the drawing down of grant funds as ongoing projects progress. Decreased revenues in the water and stormwater capital funds are largely the result of previously budgeted grant funding opportunities for projects that were ultimately not selected for funding during the current grant cycle. The city will continue to pursue future grant funding opportunities, but the budget expenditures for these projects have been removed or reduced as well. So if there's not any questions, I'd like to move on to the capital funds. And the first one is the Capital Improvement Fund on page 56 of the budget document. And each of these improvement funds lists the various projects in budget form and then also have descriptions of the various projects in the preceding pages. In the Capital Improvement Fund on page 56 of the document, some of the larger projects scheduled for 2024 include the City Hall retrofit, citywide parks improvements, the interurban trail extension, playground equipment, the 99 and Porter Way intersection project, and the sidewalk missing links project. And the next capital fund is the electric capital fund on page 62. Some of the larger projects scheduled in this fund include the substation and miscellaneous cable replacement. But please let me or Public Works Director Madden know if you have any questions about any of those projects that are scheduled as we move along or after.
Councilmember Schrader.
Where are we on last year's projects? What have we gotten done? And where are we on those projects now?
Did you have in the capital improvement fund or one of the actually, let me do it this way. So you can I don't know if you want to address it, but you can kind of get a little bit of a feeling if you look at the 2023 budget column and then the 2023 projected column and the 2024, they kind of flow together. So you can see what we had budgeted in 2023, how much we've spent in 2020, how much we project to spend in 2023. That'll give you an idea of kind of how much progress we made, at least dollar-wise. And then the 2024, for many of for the existing projects, in most cases, that's kind of what we have left dollar-wise. Okay, let's see. So,
Councilmember Whitaker, did you have a question?
Thank you. No, you're good. Where are we kind of in the substation project, roughly?
Yeah, so the substation project, we're currently contracted with Penn Light as our electrical consultant. They are doing a grid assessment, which will provide feedback on exactly what part of our electric utility needs to be upgraded. It'll identify the weak points. And then substation-wise, we are still in negotiations with BPA as to the exact cost of the existing substation. Yes,
Okay, so basically, it's where it's at the last time you and I talked,
correct.
essentially.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
There is planned maintenance. I will say BPA is planning to do maintenance this coming spring on a couple of items. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Strader?
Just refresh my memory, how far apart are the two locations for the existing substation and the new one?
initially, the new substation was identified essentially across the street.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
There is some concern about soils and the feasibility of that site actually housing a substation. So that's one of the things that kind of led to some delays here as we tried to decipher, is there room on that parcel across the street to actually house a substation? And then substations are required, but a lot of that technology is 40 years old. And there are many advances in what other options we have. One example of that would be a mobile substation that actually comes in and fits our need during planned maintenance. So we're working with Penlight right now to identify next steps on that project.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hall?
I see we have 200,000 for the citywide traffic calming. Do we have the reports back from,
They're still, you want to take this one?
Do we have the what?
do we have the reports back from the traffic calming data or assessment yet?
No, we do not yet. They will be here, I believe I'll have to look at the calendar, within the next month to present the findings of the traffic calming assessment that the city conducted.
200,000 doesn't seem like very much, but
It is not. Yeah, that carries forward what we haven't spent to date during this budget cycle, and it also builds in additional capacity. So when we get that report back telling us, what type of solutions could fit certain intersections, we'll have to be very selective with that 200,000, because you're absolutely right.
that's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, how much is a stop sign that blinks?
They're about 1,500.
Yeah, I really like to review this once we get that data.
Of course.
Any other questions on 310 or 401? Okay.
So next, please refer to the Water Capital Fund on page 71. There are a lot of projects in this fund, but I thought I would just select a few of the larger ones. Some of those larger ones include the well number 5 replacement, the new deep well, of course, funded by ARPA, funded mostly from ARPA funds, and the Juniper Street water main replacement. Lastly, please refer to the Stormwater Capital Fund on page 77. Some of the larger projects scheduled for 2024 include citywide ditch and culvert projects and Oak Street storm improvements. So that is the end of the prepared information that I have. So at this time, I'd like to take any questions or requests for clarification or additional information that any of you might have.
Councilmember Strader?
Can I go back to the original question I had before I pulled the trigger too quick? On page 46,
Okay.
salaries and wages, it's an increase to 215,040.85. And I was just looking through it, and like I said, I was trying to remember back in 2023, we decreased it by what appears to be the exact same amount that we've increased it to. And so I know we decreased it, but I can't remember
Okay,
What was the reason for the decrease, and now we're right back pretty much where we would have been?
And I could be incorrect. In the original budget document, and I can take a look real quick, but in the original 2023 budget document, that budget number for 23 was lower. And if I remember correctly, we actually brought a budget amendment to bring that number up before the end of the year because we had some snow and ice events. So this should be larger, or the amount that's showing in the 2023 budget should be actually larger than the original 2023 budget because we did a budget amendment.
I was thinking the same thing, that maybe it was overtime, but it's not marked under overtime, so it was, I was trying to figure out what it was, what
And
that was increased, which were, what wages, did we hire somebody else, or?
And
more-
actually, I misspoke. I'm sorry. That was the 2022. We needed to bring a budget amendment in 2022 to raise those wages and benefits because we had several snow and ice issues there. And so we did need to raise the budget for salaries and wages through a budget amendment for 2022. That after that, we hadn't gotten those final numbers when we prepared the 2023 budget. And so the 2023 budget probably should have been set a little higher than that. We're projecting, you can see the amounts that we are projecting are closer to those 2022, for 2023 are closer to those 2022 amounts. And those are included in the budget amendment that was or some increases to street fund wages are included in the budget amendment that was presented in the first agenda item tonight.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Cedar.
Thanks. I actually just got kind of a general high-level question. You had mentioned the annexation, potential for annexation, and how we can expect our expenditures to kind of continue at the rate in the 2024 budget. So I'm curious about how that's going to impact our general fund, because I don't think we're going to have the annexation complete for several years, right?
It's not. I just wanted to point out that in this budget, and like last year's budget, actually, we anticipated the use of general fund balance. We felt like, based on the budget, that we would have to kind of draw down some of that general fund balance in 2022. And we really, we ended up in 2022 doing a lot better than we expected, primarily as a result of those one-time revenues. So nothing that we could necessarily for sure say, hey, this is coming, and budget for it. It was some of the building and planning revenues. There were some impact fees, system development charges, things really directly associated with different development, both residential development and business development, that came in just much higher than we anticipated. So in 2022, we ended up not having to kind of roll into that ending fund balance, and we shouldn't for 2023 as well. Just this budget document does anticipate reducing that ending fund balance for 2024. We may see a lot of the same things that have happened in the past couple of years, where especially like sales taxes really surprised me by the end of 2022. I remember, in fact, during the 2023 budget presentation, I think more than one council member had said, do you really expect sales taxes to be coming in at the amount that you're showing in this proposed budget? This was last year's budget. They actually came in like $200,000 higher than we had even proposed. So we're just really seeing currently, no one, with inflation and various things happening, we don't know if, we hope that those will continue. the experience over the last 2 years is that we've just seen sales taxes steadily increase. That could be a variety of factors. That could be new business, new development. That could be just strictly based on inflation, that the price of goods is higher. So therefore, 10% of those higher prices are providing higher sales tax revenues, but they've been consistently higher. Every month I look at those reports, and honestly, I'm still shocked that they just keep coming in higher than we're expecting.
Right. Yeah. And so I hear you saying that we don't know, and the last 2 years are probably not a great predictor of the next 2 years. And I guess the concern I'm kind of getting at is, are we, if you were trying to predict the next 2 years, do you anticipate that we're going to keep digging into our general fund until we get, because I think there's going to be a net positive from annexation to our revenues.
Right.
But until then, would you anticipate we'll keep kind of digging against our general fund?
I would think, at least from a budget perspective, yes, we do look at that. But like I said, we anticipated that in the 2023 budget, and we ended up having pretty significant development revenues. I mean, mostly related to the larger development, like the bridge project and the church project. But there's also been, smaller things like new businesses, the Mod Pizzas, the Airstream Adventures, the things like that are both increasing sales taxes and those one-time development revenues. For the most part, those one-time development revenues, and some of them are big, like related to the bridge project. They just were unexpected. So we ended up not having to go into that general fund balance. That because the budget document is based basically on salaries at the highest level, benefits at the highest level, it really is conservative, and we've been conservative about projecting those revenues to not building in too many of those one-time revenues, because you don't, none of us know for sure. Trying to incorporate the things that we do know, but.
Yeah, so then drawing on your experience, having done this for a number of years, is it more typical what we've seen than in the couple of years that you've referenced, that we maybe anticipate the ratio that we've identified? Like in 2022, we anticipated that we would have to go against our general fund in order to cover it, and that we come in not having to do that. Is that more typical than the inverse of we anticipate having to dig in a little and we have to dig in a lot?
I mean,
If that question makes sense.
yeah, no, it absolutely does. Like I said, we've had a couple of really big projects and some unexpected high revenues, especially in building and planning and impact fees. And then in 2022, we really saw a boom in REIT revenues. Now, like REIT revenues in 2023, those have slowed down a little bit, I think, with the slowdown of sales. But in 2023, we've still received some of those one-time development revenues. But at this point, unless we have another big project coming to the city, I think it would be, in my opinion, that those types of revenues may not continue, and I wouldn't necessarily count on them. But on the other hand, we have seen this continued upswing in sales tax revenues that do help, kind of counteract those increases in expenditures, and we may not have to draw into the general fund balance.
Thank you. Thank you for the candid answer too. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Whalen?
I want to apologize to the council again. What I have done in studying this is looking at previous budgets, and that's just a budget document, which are numbered differently than packet numbers. So everything I've done is related to budget numbers. So I've got a few questions, but I don't know if you, at this particular time, I'd like to just go over a few things that I've reviewed and so forth, which on the budget number, which is page 2497, the organizational chart is a well-changed chart. I'm going to go through some basic things. I've heard some interesting things. That would be on page 24 of 97 or page 7 of the packet. And I've lined my packet responses out to the approved budget, which is numbered, which is separately numbered. So again, my apologies for that. There's a few things I'd like to go through. On our tonight's package, this would be on page 30 of 97 or page 13 of the actual document we're talking about, and that's the wage scale introduction. We've changed a little bit of staffing for next year. It's two additional employees, two additional employees, and looking through the document, they seem to be very appropriate. But a question, and I'll work on this here a little bit. You got to give me a chance to work back. Maintenance worker 1 on page 30 of 97. That's the wage scale packet. Everybody's got that. And for 2024, we have a maintenance worker 1. We have 4. So we're actually losing a person in that position from previous. So that position is going down. And I think that's just important to talk about in budget. Got to give me a moment. I think we have a new position of a finance administrative assistant and a deputy city clerk. Again, this is still on page 30 of 97 for the budget for 2024. There are adds to the staffing, of which I don't have any issue with. It's just to recognize where our new monies are going differently than previous budget. We had a permanent coordinator, and evidently that's changed to a permit technician. Same lower IBEW grading. What's the major difference between what we had initially wanted for a permit technician to lower the grading or to improve? Permit technician is a 14. Permit coordinator was at 16.
That came to council, I don't remember exactly when, but after the Christiana was our permit coordinator, left the city of Milton, we felt that we really just need a permit tech, not a permit coordinator. Sometimes you increase people in their positions based on longevity and expertise. And with her leaving, we just felt that the permit technician was a more appropriate position. Yeah, and I can't remember, that did come to council because it was a wage scale adjustment. I just don't remember when.
Yeah, that was budget amendment number 1 in,
Was it?
in
Okay.
May.
Yeah, and I'm just referencing to the changes, just to refresh what we have done, and I don't disagree with it. Just to recognize, and we've all seen this change and so forth within the electrical department, the grade changes. That's reflected in the new budget. Of course, it's different than the budget for 2023. There appears to be a Public Works project manager to be included for next year. Do we have a just job description? Who is that? And I may have missed it, it may have been in council and so forth, but a refresher, this is not the time to do that. What is that position's responsibilities?
So, Councilmember, that position would help Public Works facilitate capital projects.
Okay,
Yes, and it's a 3-year exempt position, and we felt that it was critical for us to overcome some of these projects that have stalled.
so is it an exempt position?
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, I should have noted, the 3 new positions we're adding, so the deputy clerk, or we're requesting to add the deputy clerk, the finance administrative assistant, and the planning manager. Those job descriptions will come in the November study session. The two IBW ones still are being negotiated. So we will get those to you at the study session in November.
City engineer. We have, of course, for 2024, we do have a city engineer, and the position's rate has changed fairly significantly from 2023. What we're seeing here, and we need an engineer, the city doesn't, we're acknowledging it by having it on the wage scale in a position. Is that going to give us a much stronger opportunity? I don't know what the rates are in the marketplace and so forth, because the rate is between 111,000 and 134,000. And that'll be dependent upon the qualification of the individual. So that's back in for hiring consideration at that rate in 2024. It's a needed position, and I think it's worthy of just bringing up to talk about the fundamentals of the government. I'll
Well, no,
pass. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to add, so we actually did a salary study for all exempt staff, because we know that, you know, people do move on, and we want to be, you know, attractive to our current and future employees. So we used the same cities that we used for the police negotiations. So our comp cities are Sumner, Duval, DuPont, Edgewood, Enumclaw, Black Diamond, Gig Harbor, and Buckley. And so you actually are seeing an increase for several positions: police chief, assistant police chief, public works director, city engineer, and city clerk.
And it's all appropriate to do. It's just a point of discussion in the budget
Yeah.
process. So if you see that or recognize the difference between last year and this year and so forth, all of these are justified. And our total staff will go up by 2 employees by everything you have on wage scales if they're all filled. The same thing with our journeyman electricians and so forth. And now, it now shows in the 2024 budget, the rate scale that they're appropriately at marketplace value, which is quite a bit different from it previously was, but it's a very justified change. And just to speak about that, so somewhere you're going to see this, to think about it. I will pass for a moment until I find my next, because I'm rated by a different number system. You know? And again, I use the old budget, and there's the page number 12 for citywide. And in this one, it's page 29 and 97. And I didn't transpose those numbers to my, just apologizing for being a little bit behind everybody right now. But I'll pass for a moment if you have, until I find what I wanted to speak.
Councilmember Whitaker?
Thank you. So really, after what you were saying about the taxes and funds from projects that feed the REITs and so on and so forth. So those are really the only things that when you're budgeting for revenue, those are really the only ones that you can, the REIT funds and the sales tax and property tax, because that's going to come in every year, correct? So then you just, if a big project comes in, and then you're going to get funds from that big project, that's the only time that you can then incorporate that. So at this point, I guess, a long way of saying, so at this point for 2024, there aren't any big foreseen influxes of revenue other than from sales tax, property taxes, and the impact fees. Am I?
Nope,
Right.
that's a perfect summation of
Okay.
it. Unless we knew of something specific, an amount specifically that we were going to receive in 2024. There's some grant funding, not much, but something like grant funding that we received the paperwork on, we know we're going to get it. We're generally going to include it in there.
Okay.
But for the development revenues, unless we're like positive, we know when we're going to get that and how much it's going to be, it has been excluded for the most part from those large revenues.
Okay.
You know, we've tried to adjust the revenues based on trends and increase, decrease appropriately. But those large revenues, they are excluded at least from the 2024 numbers because, you know, sometimes those do change. Sometimes developers put delay projects or run into issues, or the number, isn't for sure amount. So we have been fairly conservative, basically kind of erring on the low side on revenues and erring on a little bit higher side on the expenditures.
So in your opinion, riding on those monies that we know we're getting, how long do you foresee that, as Councilman Cedar, talked about going into the general fund? How long do you think that those can sustain the city on the expenditures that we have?
That's a really good question.
I mean, how do you see that?
That's actually a really good question. I'd probably have to look at it
Okay.
a little bit more. I will point you back to, let me see, page 4. It's part of the mayor's budget message, and it shows the general fund ending balance over the last 4 years. And when we presented and this is just a snapshot, so I know it doesn't totally answer your question, but when we presented the 2023 budget, we felt like we were probably going to need to draw down on general fund revenues, and we ended up seeing one of the largest increases in the last 4 years. But like I said, that is almost directly related to the bridge project, those one-time projects that will be finished at a certain point.
At some point.
Yeah. But some of these increased expenditures are also somewhat related to that increased development revenue, increased sales taxes. There's administrative work that goes with that. There's new utility accounts. There's new maintenance work. So.
Okay. And then that's where then rate studies come into play. So then you can raise rates, so then you can cover other areas. I mean, I totally understand that. It's, you answered another question too, of that's why 2022 was the way it was, is you had those 2 projects come up.
Right.
So it's probably going to go back, correct, more to like 2021.
That would be my guess. Yeah, we really have seen, and this is a good thing, we've seen unexpectedly, at least compared to historical numbers, unexpectedly high amounts for all of those in 2022 and 2023. So I would hope that some of those continue and we continue to see development. At this point, we've basically seen 2 years of sales taxes that me personally, I didn't expect the sales taxes to continue. So I would say that those increased sales taxes most likely will continue. Those are something that that at this point, I would anticipate, my best guess, I would anticipate that those will continue. Unless another COVID hits or something drastic, that those and the property taxes, utility taxes, those kind of basic revenues, those will continue. But the large amounts that we're seeing, like in building permits and plan review fees, maybe not.
Okay. This was fun. Thank you.
Councilmember Whalen?
If I might just move up to a page in the 2024 budget, page 34 of 97. And I'm referencing back also to that same similar page to last year's budget. And it's just numbers to be aware of. Don't be surprised by them. They're justified and so forth. But our wage allocations amounts, which you see as a total, is $839,489 compared to last year of $671,000. So it's a significant change. But people are being compensated for the jobs they're doing. They're doing multiple jobs, and it's recognized that it's a value to the city of Milton. But if you look at that, and if you happen to have the old budget, you'll see almost a $200,000 move. Not a whole lot of no folks and so forth, but they've been justified and we're aware of them. And the same thing with benefit allocation amounts, which used to be slightly under $300,000. Now it's slightly under $400,000. If those numbers are important to you, I'm just saying there's justification, and we've been participating in that justification to move those numbers. That sometimes comes up when people look at the budget. You all don't have last year's, but it's the best benchmark for some expenditures to look across both of them. And I'll pass for now until I find the next page I've looked at. But again, the support on this is absolute.
I just wanted to clarify, are you talking about the indirect cost wage and benefit allocations? Or
It just says benefit allocation amounts.
Okay.
And
So
that's it. On the budget you're presenting today, that's page 34 of 97.
Okay, or 17 of the budget document? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So I did.
By the way, it's 17 in the old one, too.
Oh. I like to be consistent. One thing that I do want to point out with those specific allocations is they are a little bit, they are higher, and then they do filter out to the electric, water, stormwater, and information technology and vehicle repair funds. The primary increase or reason for the increase for those are the two positions that are part of the allocation. That would be the addition of the deputy city clerk and the addition of a finance administration. So there was a jump in those allocations because the positions that we're proposing to add directly affect are those positions that are shared. Their services are shared across the city. So then adding those positions ups the amount to be allocated among the different funds, if that makes sense.
And it's good to discuss them, just to go through it, because the justification and the need for this is absolute.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember White?
I just had a general question about, on the general fund revenues, page 22.
I'm sorry, what page?
General fund revenues, page 22.
22, thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
I see a couple of tax revenue categories here that confuse me.
Sure.
Where's the gambling tax coming from?
Gambling taxes is in other taxes, the other taxes line.
I know, but what is it in the city that's being taxed?
Oh,
for-
okay. Well,
for
we have a
gambling.
few entities that do remit gambling taxes. I don't know if I can say if it's okay to say their names on the record or,
I mean, what type of businesses?
Like pool
are
tab,
they?
is pool tabs one? It's like,
yeah, pull
Pull
tabs,
tabs.
punch cards. I think it's mostly pull tabs at
Okay.
some
All right,
various
at-
bars, restaurants.
All right, okay. And then parks sales tax, how is that charged? Who's paying that?
That is a portion of the sales tax. The sales taxes are broken down
Okay.
and they get allocated to various different places, and where we get a portion of that, the state gets a portion of that, the county gets a portion of that, the fire gets a portion of
Okay.
that. And I could send a breakdown of how those are allocated, but when you do pay tax on something, the city doesn't get 100% of that sales tax. We get a portion of that
Yeah,
sales tax. And
I understand
there's
that
a
part.
there's a parks portion to that as well.
Okay, and that
That's
is
separated out.
is that a county level tax or a state level tax?
The parks?
The parks part, yeah.
I honestly would have to look at it. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
And then,
MRSC has a really great display of all the city's taxes that are broken down by the various different pieces that make up those.
okay. And then, I know we've talked about this in the past, but the parking tax. Looks like, I mean, we can always count on that. But what, there was a question at some point in terms of whether vehicle storage was being taxed or whether it was just paid parking that was being taxed. Have we come to a conclusion on that?
We did present it to, we had discussions and we did present, and please correct me if I'm not remembering correctly, but we did present the question to our attorneys as well, and they interpreted that tax as currently written would not apply to vehicle storage, that it was meant, I forget the specific terminology, but it was basically entities that are in the business of that have a parking business. So meant for, at least the way it's currently written in our code, that it's meant for places like a Republic parking, where people come in, pay a fee, and then leave.
And so what kind of business is remitting us $50 for the year?
Well, we currently don't receive a lot in parking taxes. In previous years, we had a few businesses around the city that did remit some parking taxes. Those businesses are no longer remitting those taxes. And we really saw, we were receiving taxes from about 2 or 3 different businesses really up until kind of mid-COVID, and then those just dropped off.
And what kind of businesses were those?
I know one of them. I don't know the particular business that was the other one. The payments that we received were under an individual's name. I believe he ran some sort of parking place, and the other one was the Daffodil Motel.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Whalen?
And just another one not to be overly concerned about are building permits in 2022 is $821,000. Our expectation for 2024 is $200,000. Don't forget about Lloyd's, and that Lloyd's was involved with a lot of that permitting process.
And I believe that 2022 revenue was particularly that. I'm going to look in my spreadsheet here and see if I have a notation, because some of those big changes like that I tried to note in my revenues so that I could easily answer those type of questions. But let's see. That was. The building, oh, I did. The amount in 2022 included a payment from Bridge Development of about $634,000. So
Yeah.
a large majority of that $800,000 that you're seeing is strictly related to Bridge Development.
Yeah.
And so the budget for 2023 and then 2024 is based on historical revenues going back really to 2014. That's as far as our accounting system, our current accounting system goes back, looking at what we would generally receive in building permit revenue if you excluded the bridge development project, those big projects. And it tends to run right around $200,000 unless there's some big projects like that.
Good. Now, that's pretty much the same answer for on page 23 or page 40 of 97, which is another part of the general fund. We have plan reviews and other planning fees and so forth, which have gone up significantly and then gone back to a normal state of mind. So,
It has, and so the amount in 2022, the actual amount was related to various large developments. And then the amount that you're seeing there for the the projected amount of roughly 624,000, that number is based on actual amounts of revenues that we have received to date. And I just had that it included multiple large development payments. The amount in 2022 included a large payment of about $400,000 from Anelco Architecture. And at one point I knew what that was. I don't know if our planning manager remembers what it was. I want to say it was like a senior living development or a multi-family development of some sort. That's that 2022 amount. And the 2023 amount, there were various plan reviews in there, including Bridge, Slavic Salvation, and then there were quite a few other large payments that were for residential type developments in there as well.
yeah, but it's just good to mention that's fluid with the economy. That's fluid with the need for the city and so forth. So it's not like something bad happened. It's just normal process.
Yes, that's incredible. And I wanted to put that projected amount, the amount that we'd actually received in there, because it does affect like where we begin in 2024, that beginning ending fund balance, and we have actually received that money. So I wanted to put that in there, but I also want to recognize that next year we may not be seeing 623,000 in that revenue line.
And this answers the total charges for service fluctuation, because it $723,000 down to $227,000. And so it just answers that non-finance person's question. But I understand it after long enough. So just to bring that up for, if you see it, we talked about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for those that had these fluctuations, like those two you just mentioned, those big fluctuations, I really tried to look back like several years, going back to 2014, 2015, to get an idea of what a more average year was, and built that into the budget. If I hadn't been provided with information like, hey, we're going to receive this $500,000 payment in 2024. If we had received that information, I would have built it into the budget, but I tried to just look historically without the bridge development, church projects, what that revenue looks like. And that's what's been built into the 2024 budget.
And I like to mention it because you are transitioning. It's just to go through those lines, you know how we think. And it's a good thing to speak about now. And I'll pass until I find the next.
Councilmember Whitaker?
Thank you. Can we dig into a little minutia?
Yeah,
Just a little.
I'm all about minutia.
So, because the gambling tax was brought up, and I think I know the answer to this. So that was, if we go between pages 21 and 22. Granted, of course, 21 is a summary, so I totally understand that. Where it says utility taxes, that's all the utility taxes on page 22.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Other taxes, funny how that number reflects what's in gambling tax. So where does even though it's small, but the hotel motel tax, is that rolled into the sales tax?
It is not. It's going to be the other.
Is it
Other
because the
taxes.
amount is not, the amount that's in there is what's in the gambling tax? If you look at it, it's,
Yeah, I can give you the actual.
and actually though,
breakdown.
I'm looking at the 2022 actual were the same.
Yeah.
And so they're off, but it doesn't reflect, anyway, just something I noticed and went, okay, that doesn't jive.
Yeah, that means 5385. I want to make sure.
Because it should be dumping that into other taxes, right? Because it doesn't look like it is.
And which tax in particular?
If you go to the summary and it says other taxes.
Yes. Okay.
It doesn't appear that the hotel and motel tax is adding to the amount that's in other taxes.
Well, I can tell you for sure here.
I mean, like I said, it's very small, but
Nope, it's good to know, because, let's see, I have the. general
unless I'm
fund
missing, that it's
and
it's
other
rolled into
taxes.
another category, but
Um,
just something I
29,
noticed in.
30. Well, let's see here. In the other taxes, it's gambling tax and parking tax.
Okay.
And so that utility taxes eligible. Okay,
You don't have-
the utility taxes are actually inclusive of the electric utility tax, water
Right.
utility tax, gas, sewer, cable, telephone.
That makes
So
sense.
then the hotel motel, and I think I'm getting at where I think that is wrapped into the sales taxes. So
Okay.
that is 18 through 20.
And I mean, you don't have to answer it now. I don't mean to put you on the spot. I just
Nope,
noticed
it
that
is-
went,
It is rolled into the sales.
Sales tax,
taxes.
okay.
Yeah.
thank you.
And we've kept that since my predecessor, I kept the same roll-ups that she had, more for consistency. But there's certainly no reason that we couldn't break those out farther or differently. Just that.
No,
just kept
I totally understand that keeping it consistent. So not that, I just was wondering where those funds are being reflected.
Yeah, that it is a little bit weird to add those in there. But
Thank you.
Councilmember Whalen, did you find your next question?
Well, I was just going to mention another cash flow visual here, and that's on that page 22, 439 of 97. License and permits, miscellaneous, fire alarm, fire plan services. A lot of this is Lloyd's. A lot of, is my understanding. That's why you'll see one day for plan review, $55,000. And then the year after that, 7,000. That's a lot of Lloyd's requirements. The same thing with the miscellaneous, with the fire alarm permits, which I believe that's a yearly cost, but it's been steady for the last 3 years. But it moved up from $983 to $3,000. But I believe that's on Lloyd's property. Let me call it that. Amazon's paying for this. I'm just kidding. But they are. So you see those fluctuations. There's nothing to be alarmed about, especially if you talk about it.
And once again, on the fire plan reviews, I can look, I didn't make a note on that one in particular, but I can look it up. But it was the same thing. It was the fire plan review for one of the big projects that was one or a few of the big projects that was bumping that number up in 2022.
But it's natural now for it to fade down. It's a one-time thing or a one-time plus thing a little bit.
Absolutely.
And if I might, you'll see the same thing on the general fund, page 23 or 40 of 97, which is charges for service. You'll see a large charge in 2022, and then it flattens out. Then it's a large charge, and it flattens out again. That's generally in the development cycle of things that we have to do. So don't worry, we're not failing there. We're just benefiting from some improvements for certain years.
Councilmember Whalen, I don't think anyone else has any more questions. Do you have any more questions?
No, go ahead.
No, everyone else has asked all their questions.
Oh, not particularly at this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
So again, you have a month to look at this budget document. I am available for questions. Michelle, while she's still here, is available for questions. I'm sure Anjali and Dustin and Chief are available for questions. So please just reach out. If you do ask a question, we will share the answer with all of council because it's important that everyone knows. So with that, seeing that we have concluded our 2 items this evening, I will adjourn our meeting at 8:30.